Welcome to Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. I'll be covering every studio song the band has recorded and every bonus track that I can find. Each week we'll go over a new song from the beginning to where they are currently, and as they keep adding albums, I'll keep adding shows. Let the deep dive party begin.
In the magic garden, some were singing, some were dancing.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. I could not have a more appropriate titled song to bring to you right now. As I loaded up my system to record this episode, there was a warning from the software that I use, which is Cakewalk by BandLab. I've been with them since the late 90s, mid-90s, late 90s, somewhere in there. And it used to be that you had to pay for the software. It was very expensive. You'd have every year or two, you'd have to pay, for the next upgrade. Sometimes it would be $99. Sometimes it would be, $250, $300. And it was quite expensive over the years. And then Gibson purchased it from 12 Tone. Bless their hearts, wanted to do it. They really didn't know how to make it work and nearly ran it into the ground. It was about to they were going to cut it and no one was going to be able to get any future updates. That was going to be the end of it. And then BandLab came in and purchased it and said, you know what, we're going to make this free forever, which is amazing. And for those people who started with the program after they purchased it, life is great. A lot of us paid a good amount of money into it, but the great thing is BandLab has been fantastic about updating this for free. They do tons of bug fixes and stuff all the time, quite amazing. But for some reason, I got this glitch that I needed to reactivate my software, which is weird because there's really no activation for it. It's free. You download it, you log into the BandLab account, and you just run it, and it's really no big deal. But I've heard this happening to other people. So I put in my login and it doesn't work. And I thought, well, that's strange. So I thought, okay, well, I'll push the update then. And through the update process, I'll have to log into the BandLab account on the website, and that should activate the software again. Well, unfortunately, the update didn't load properly, and then it zapped it off my system completely. So for the last half an hour or so, I've been dealing with getting back up and running and hoping that all of my templates and all of the routing for my effects and instruments and everything worked. And so far, everything seems to be okay. But that's kind of draining on you. You want to get your project done, and now you're panicking because your software doesn't work. It's so amazing how dependent we've become on these things. I do have backups, different things that I can do if I needed to record the episode elsewhere, but it might sound different. It might have a different tonality to it and then be out of context to the rest of the shows. So, and this is the most efficient setup that I have. So it's been a trial, but I'm happy to be back up and running at what seems to be 100% capacity. Yay. And I can now review the next song in the catalog. So we are on the song So Tired off of the Wonder World album. This is surprising because when you look at the title, you think, okay, this is going to be a slower song, something that has like lyrics all about being like, I'm just so tired. I've tried so hard. And you think that it's going to be one of those songs that, would sink you to the bottom of the lake. But it is not. It is a pretty good rock and roller. And after the last song, it's good to be back to something that has a little bit more power, a little bit more of what we come to think for this band in terms of power and heavy sound. I like the last song. I think it was good, but when you're listening to a predominantly rock and roll band, you only want to have so much that gets away from at least some kind of drive or something to pump you up or jam along to. So I'm glad we're back to that, although I really did like the last song. So let's dig in and see what we've got. Here is So Tired. Kicking it right off the bat, showing what kind of song we're going to get here. No, long or drawn out intros or anything, just straight into it. And it's got a great balance between the guitar, the bass, the drums, and the organ. Really like the way it kicks in the second half, gets a little more screechy and squealy between the organ and the guitars. Some really nice muted strumming there as well. Kicker right off the bat. Well, it's been a while since we've had a pretty good Jimi Hendrix reference, but this goes back to that style of, Let Me Stand Next to Your Fire, where you've got the riff, the vocals go between the rest of the instruments playing, but you have like usually the drums or something keeping it going while the vocals are going. And I really like to have this structure every once in a while. It's good to see when a band can use this setup several times, but do it different every time and make it fresh and alive. This one's got some great energy to it. I love what Lee Kerslake is playing here. Really powerful stuff. And then when the music does kick in, it just seems so much bigger because you're only getting it in spurts instead of just having it play the whole time through, where you would get used to it. It wouldn't have, you get the initial power at the beginning of the song, but throughout the song, you kind of tend to lose that level of attack. You get used to it. It's not hitting you in the chest as much anymore in the middle of the song as it does in the beginning. So it's nice when you have a structure like this, because when the instruments do kick in, it hits you in the chest all over again, and then you get it all through the song. So it's pretty nice. You couldn't do it all the time. I wouldn't even say you should do it once an album. Maybe every 2 or 3 albums to have a song like this is good. But it's good. And you've got a really good, powerful vocalist that can really carry that when everyone else drops out. You don't get that with a lot of bands. Somebody who can really just drive it with their emotion, their inflections that they put in it, the accents where they hit the notes a little bit harder than other times. And he's just such a great singer. And between that, playing with Lee Kerslake, the two of them together really just keep that webbing of this whole thing going. One thing I really love about a song like this, and this one in particular, is that it goes to show how much you can do with very little. You don't have a lot of layers. So far, we haven't heard any crazy vocal harmonies. We haven't hit a solo yet. And yet the song is so enjoyable. Just the couple of parts that we've heard. You got a good riff. You have a good balance between the keyboards and the guitars to keep it going. You've got drums and vocals for the verse. And you've got bass kicking in when it needs to. But it's just really cool because it's so entertaining and enjoyable, yet it's very simple and straightforward. And I think it's great to do something that kind of drops back every once in a while. I mean, this band is certainly amazing at layering, about doing multiple things at the same time. God, the vocals that we heard in the last song were unbelievable, what they did. But it's also nice to just dial back a little bit and just do something straightforward, just a good, straightforward rock and roll song. And that's what we're getting here. And no sooner did I make that comment that it took a completely different turn into something very different and very unexpected, but very Uriah Heepish, really nice vocal part during that. I really liked the change. I really liked the feel of it. It kind of felt, I hate to make these comparisons to other bands, but that kind of felt a little bit Beatlesque right there. Just a little more up-tempo than something that you would normally get from the Beatles. But a really cool part, a nice change. And, that is another thing that this band is just so good at, is putting in things that are unexpected. To go from, here's the riff, now we're going to do the riff like, 2 or 3 notes up, or, in a slightly different key or whatever. Like, that's expected from pretty much every band. But then what this band takes and does with that is always something interesting. And that's one of the things I really love about their music, is they don't do what you would expect them to do. And if they start doing what you expect them to do, it's not going to be that for long. It's going to morph into something else pretty quick. Like, they're just such creative artists. And the performances are always amazing. Don't get me wrong. The performances should never be undersold. But the writing and how it all comes together is such an important part of this band's sound. And the way that they just find just a little extra can make the biggest difference in a piece of music. Well, it's a very interesting solo section there, because you've got some bits where there's a lot going on and some bits where there's next to nothing going on. And it's a really strange balance. I would wonder what some of the thoughts were behind doing it this way. Because for me, for the most part, the beat's going, and when the beat's not there, you can still feel it. But it just kind of seems a little bit unbalanced to my ear. And the parts that they play are good, but then there's one that just, there's a long silence and then just a couple of tom hits and back into it. It just seems like it's kind of a little too light for me. Maybe if there had been another tone or two different things happening behind that, would have been a little bit better for me. But I'm sure that there was a reason behind it. It's kind of interesting when you hear a band do that, because it just seems a little weird to me. But overall, pretty cool still. The song just rocks. And strange solo section aside, in fact, I really love some of the sounds that they did have in there. That lower growling instrument, I don't know if that was a guitar or not. And then you've got a lot of sounds like whammy bar work in there as well. And that was pretty cool. I really like the tone of that, actually. But and the panning on that was really going all the way across to the right ear and then back again, which was a nice choice, I thought. But there were just parts in there that I thought seemed a little. They could have put a little more in there for me. But I also have to keep in perspective that we're talking a song that was recorded in the mid 70s versus where we're at now in 2021. Our understanding of music has changed. Our feelings of music have changed. The way we write has changed. And sometimes it's a little difficult to keep that in perspective, because we're judging things that happened 45, 50 years ago. And I really don't like to think I'm judging it, because I really like to think I'm looking for the good and interesting things in it more than judging it. But, we're looking at these things and analyzing, I guess would be a better word, in a completely different era. Think about, at this point, the 80s hadn't happened yet. Punk rock wasn't really that big of a thing yet. I mean, it was a whole different world. Disco hadn't even been invented. So when you look at it and you look at it in that set of eyes, thinking about it in the proper time frame, It's like I can look at a song that I wrote when I was really young and go, it was okay, but I could have done better. But at the time, that was what I felt the song should be. And when I look back on it now, I can go, okay, well, 30 years later, with the knowledge that I have now, I would do this differently and I would add things here. I would remove this or whatever changes I would make to it. But what I'm really doing is modernizing it with where I currently write. And so when I look at what they're doing, I can say, well, even at that time, it seems like they would have done something differently, but maybe that was part of the experiment. So it's like, let's really lay back on this song. Let's make it minimal, but keep it going. I don't know. But I do find that there's some interesting choices in there, but I really do like the sounds that I do hear. I think Lee's playing is great during this too. Gary's is a little more buried for me in this one. I'm not hearing him as prominently as I do normally, but I think the keyboards are drowning him out a little bit as well, because it sounds like they're covering some of the bass. They're doubling it. So, but really cool nonetheless. I really like the vocal. I like the drive of the song. It's got a good tempo and good beat to it. And I love the tone of everything. Rant over. I really love that interplay between the vocals and the guitars. It sounds fantastic. And I love Mick's tone on this. It's another one where he just has that right amount of distortion on the guitar. Any more and it might sound too heavy, any less and it might sound too thin. It's really just, he's so good at getting a good sound. And I don't know where he was as far as equipment goes at that point, what his setup was he was using it then versus what he's got today. I'm sure it's completely different today from then, but man, he was getting such a good sound back then too. And I love the sound he's getting now. He sounds much heavier now. But of course, it's a completely different band, a different time, different studios, different production methods. But I really like the way he sounds on this album too. I thought so on Sweet Freedom as well. Actually, I don't think there's any time I haven't liked his sound on anything that we've reviewed. I can't think of a single thing. I tend to differ a little bit more as far as the engineer goes on the balance of the instruments. I do think that there's some songs and some albums, like I think Sweet Freedom was a fantastic mix, although there were a few things that I disagreed with. But really, a lot of times I think Mick gets a little bit buried when he's playing more rhythm, and they kind of put him a little more center than left, and they tend to put Ken in the right ear. So there tends to be, I think, a slight off balance as far as the overall sound of just the keyboard guitar balance, because you're pushing Ken further to the right, so he's going to stand out more. Whereas when you center things a little bit more, and you've got the bass centered, and the drums are basically taking that center position in a small space to the left and right, it tends to blend in a little much. So I'm surprised that they don't put Mick a little bit more into the left ear so that his sound can be more defined. He can have his own space. But they did it the way they did it, and we just were able to hear what we can hear. But that's the only complaint I have as far as Mick goes, is just really the way that it's mixed. I think he plays a lot of stuff that just gets buried because it's more rhythmic, and he doesn't really get to be heard for everything that he did. And I think that's a shame. But in this song, I think it's a pretty good mix. It's a good combination. I think he could, again, be a little bit more into the left ear to separate himself from the bass and drums. But I really like the balance of guitar and organ. And then at the end there, that guitar and vocal part. The organs are really so screechy too, that can bury a lot of things in the mix, especially in the mid and upper mid range. But overall, yeah, it's a good song. It's a good rocker. I think we needed some energy after the last song. And again, I'm not knocking the last song, because if you guys listened to the last episode, you know how much I liked it. But I think, when you're doing a rock and roll album and you're 3 songs in, if you're going to do something that's really dialed back, then you gotta come back with a good strong beat. And I think they've absolutely done that here. So far, I think the song order seems to be really well placed. And it helps to have, a song like this. Okay, like we're all relaxed on the last one. We all just kind of like laid back and listened to it and went, wow, now it's time to drive it again and get us all pumped up. And if you don't hear it in my voice, I am, but maybe that's also because I just solved the issues with the computer and I'm able to record another episode, which is, for me feels pretty good. So that's it for So Tired, guys. I hope you enjoyed the review. Definitely a good rock and roll song. And if you just want to kick back and hear something that's just going to make you tap your foot and, maybe bounce your thumb on your knee or on your belly or wherever you do it, this would be a good one to listen to for that. So highly enjoyable song. There hasn't been one I haven't liked, honestly, and we're 7 albums in now. And that's a pretty good record for me because I have a fairly short attention span. Of course, a lot of that is relying on memories from when I didn't have a short attention span, but I'm pretty sure I would have liked all these songs if this was the first time I was hearing any of them. So very cool, very good song. And that wraps up this episode. We are off tomorrow, but we will see you on Thursday for another episode of Uriah Heep, the Magicians Podcast, where we review every Uriah Heep song that they recorded that I know about and can find and locate and walk through for you. We'll see you guys. Have a good one. Oh, cheers. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Uriah Heep, the Magicians Podcast. If you have enjoyed this show, please consider going over to Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast outlet, leaving a rating or a review. Be sure to subscribe to make sure that you are notified when new episodes are available. Please be sure to share this podcast with your fellow Uriah Heep enthusiasts and anyone who you think would like Uriah Heep, which should be everyone. And if you are so inclined, please feel free to contribute to the Patreon account. And if you are not a Patreon subscriber, you can also pay through the PayPal link on the website listed in the show links below. I would also like to thank Uriah Heep for their very generous support of the show, and thank you guys for listening. We'll see you in the next episode. Happy days!